Yeah.
Are you drinking it?
Why'd you?
No, I'm just kidding. I didn't get a coffee this morning. I keep looking at it.
Can I just take it from you?
Yeah. All right, Mr.
Oh, it's Bill McCarthy music today.
Okay. No, I left as soon as the dinner was over.
Yeah. These little, kind of like, I think it's really handy. Just really like clamp down. Can't take credit for that. Jake, you know Jake Shire? I used to see that kid. I don't know where he found it, but he found it.
I have that live. I have the Z9. But I think it's like a something. Never, so the Trump Hotel is now the becoming the Waldorf. I'm like, you know, have you ever been, did you ever been to Trump Hotel? I never went, for no reason, the only reason I never went is because they never, I just was, health concentration was less than desirable.
Yeah, what?
Didn't you hear on like Connecticut?
Yeah, that's true, I guess it was.
Not close, no.
They have this bacon thing, they're delivering bacon on a closed bin.
I remember seeing photos.
Yeah. That's my, like, sole memory.
Of the Trump Hotel. Yeah, I never really got a. Just never had a reason to go. Mm-hmm.
Steve, do you wanna check the levels here, please?
Okay.
This is Chad and Steve Shelton, testing 1, 2, thank you.
Yeah. Stressed out there. You didn't get the memo?
Good, how are you?
How's your arm?
That's normal.
I mean,
Do you have therapy?
yeah. Actually, I'm supposed to start in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So,
The range of motion.
range of motion is fine. That's what
Okay.
I
What's up, what's up?
Yeah, you told me, you told me that.
So, like, so basically, like, you know, my boss has a muscle strain. You know, it's hard. Muscles. Check, check, check. Looks like it's on.
Fell.
It fell.
Make sure it's all the way connected.
Is it on? Check, check, can you hear me?
Yeah, well. Running late.
Hey, Jayla, it's Steve at HVCA again. I just wanna make sure you're seeing the head on camera from the phone, correct? Here at HVCA. You should also see the head on shot from the phone. And you should be getting, and the audio for the podium should be up right there.
No.
Are you looking at the head on or the side cam? Are you still, okay. I just want there to be no confusion. The podium mic is on the head on camera, and Chad's audio is on my camera this side. Got it. Okay, all right, sir, thank you very much.
Test was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sounds good.
Hopefully it shouldn't be. Is it like, okay, this one? It's yeah. Last night. It's fine.
Hey, Ally.
What's
What's
Huh?
up?
They, it was at the, Mandarin.
It's over.
If he pans up
Yeah.
for that. all right.
You.
Thank you.
After you're having your race.
Yes. After the race.
The level is just.
Boy, you are gonna be the bionic man, aren't you?
Like 2 days of like.
I didn't see you around, but I wondered.
Yeah, that was like, it was 2 weeks ago. And it was just showed that Yeah.
How did you do it?
I think those are wise then.
Yeah, I think so. Got too many beats in my ears.
Okiwa. Who was the
Hey, I've got a question for you. Are you getting any audio from me?
You're struggling, but it's not
Like that,
potentially.
football game that they were televising on the, yeah.
As soon as it ended, I
Yeah.
stuff like that, and then
Nicole.
I ordered.
Somebody with Carolina.
4, 5, 6,
Okay, so
Luckily,
you're gonna be-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay,
4,
really.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay.
And I got home, and I,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, I've been doing,
It's amazing, for 2 years up here.
Okay, thanks a lot, appreciate it.
No, yes. My wife got symptoms.
it's amazing, right?
Get the sound, so it can speak.
Different issue.
There are some compatibility issues.
I guess I thought they were, because of cicadas.
Yeah.
Because you told me
Yeah,
some,
that was-
some rhyme.
Yeah, yeah, good memory.
23.
Yeah.
Right?
Are you gonna swing to that or something else? I've seen it.
Why not one here?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. If you do.
I've seen, oh, yeah, man, I remember that game very,
Like,
very.
literally, because they have a fake foul pole there, it's like 460.
Yeah.
And but it's to the right of
Oh,
it, so
yeah.
it's more like 500 or more.
He just dropped his bat, just stared at it.
Yeah, Glen Allen Hill.
He was a big dude. I saw that.
Which was.
Alex, can I wear your jacket?
Huh?
It's cold in here, can I wear your jacket?
With 8 shirts on.
Two. Two.
Just the Mario Battalion court.
Like a button-up shirt on, like a sweater on, he had this crazy big striped coat on.
Okay.
Yeah, and Lanier.
Yeah, that's
For
right,
48
that's right.
cents.
He did say
It's
one
Bob,
Lanier.
it's Bob Lanier.
Yeah. That was great. Tell you all.
You know who was supposed to play that role? You know, was supposed to play that role. Yeah, it was supposed to be when the Green played.
Really? Why didn't you do it?
Because the Raiders played, and I know this was an exhibition series in November of '78 in Japan.
So he was out of time.
Yeah, and at least for that run, that was the last one.
That's very good. We're creating perfect tonight.
Yeah, it was. So that line, let's see here, what it was. It rose,
You tell your old
you
man.
tracked right there fastball, Carlton, Seaver,
Oh,
Candelaria.
have him in the morning going in, if you go around the back of his
I
courthouse.
love the scene
And she
where
gets
they're talking about going to Boston.
he gets out of his car and walks in.
Rats and everything. You
But
see
there's
this
a pool
shadowy
inside
figure
the
walking through it.
courthouse.
And they're
Yeah, I
playing
just
this
think
whole
one on broke.
country gospel. Satan is real.
I mean, we
Which is
ran
from
from
the
the
actual song.
Yeah.
That's Larry Bird.
All right.
You couldn't go inside, you could go inside and watch though. The pictures, you have pictures outside, around the back, yeah. People in the back.
Very good.
Yeah, all the actors.
Well, people get pictures of him out there all the time. They have fans out there and stuff. And he usually has his window down his leg.
He just got
John Depp.
He was a professor at Stanford. I asked for casting, saw casting calls.
One break, yeah, the judge. I think that's how it was. Yeah, like two or three times. Yeah. Like 170 witnesses for the prosecution. Many for. Most of them. Most of them are video deposition. There were so many. But they're on the defense now. What's funny is that my buddy,
Think somebody else.
one of my buddies for like 10 years,
Player was on the floor.
they was in the house,
Fell in that
stuff.
So surreal.
Covered in
Yeah, it's
salt.
crazy. And I was pool one day, I was in, she didn't even, polo game face 100%.
I wondered if you'd been full, you were full.
I was pool, yeah.
And she didn't.
She was 100% game face. She didn't like, not even a nod for 8 hours.
That's pretty good. But it was like a little side eye, nothing.
Nothing for 8 hours. I gave her plenty of opportunity. I was like, Maureen going like this.
You should send her a little letter, thanks for not ever knowing.
No. She's like,
No, she did the right thing.
oh yeah. But can you imagine she had this judge's conference to go to? And so she shows up there. She's probably like everybody. Like, hey, Judge, hey. But she can't talk about it. Right? It's ongoing. It's ongoing. Yeah, it's crazy.
I saw, I was in the crew, watched a couple hours.
But it's interesting, but it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. I'm so sorry for something. Yeah.
You feel sorry for them.
Yeah. The funny joke was the other day is, it's funny. It was the program. I remember when all this had like 3 and 5 days, which is odd. Right? And then I saw on Instagram, I someone put, I guess Johnny did get the name brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty.
Whether, I don't know. who it was.
Polish.
No, it was
Right.
the,
It was crazy.
yeah, that was the other coach, yeah.
It's just sad.
West
It's
Hill
really
got him
sad.
filled in, right?
Story.
He did, well, yeah.
West Hill filled in, he was the other guy.
Abuse and, addiction. It's just really
I thought
sad.
it was West Hill.
Yes, they both were arrested according to the testimony.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like it as an athlete.
Cause he didn't want to go.
You know,
The excess, man.
way
Taking
too
drugs.
It was actually
He's got a huge, takes his dog down the street, and he's not.
Well, he has his own island in the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, you know,
It's
I
actually.
mean, I might too.
The tracks
you know,
is some things that are similar to
figure it out,
fictionalized version, but
money doesn't make you happy.
some consistency.
Well,
to
he's
it.
not,
It's
I mean, if you believe what he
a
said,
4-part thing.
see, I mean, I think they were in love at one,
Oh,
at one
yeah.
stage, you know?
Sure,
It's just toxic, you know?
but at some point, it's obviously.
It's all toxic. I mean, she was saying, like, I mean, the text messages don't lie, right? It's what they said at the
Yeah.
time.
I'm stunned at that.
She's like, yeah, this
30 for 30.
hanging out
Yeah,
at
you
John's
don't
house.
get a picture of all of them.
Yeah, Ken Bone did, baseball does a pretty good segment.
Wasn't like everybody else in the
I
world.
mean, it's, it's.
I mean, it's fantastic.
You know, seven,
Keith Richards.
you know, it's really, there's a lot. you can
He's
do.
Yeah.
I still got 2
It was
finals.
in one of his movies.
Right.
He's one of the old pirates.
I mean, literally, I could think he.
Yeah.
What?
Trump
Bill?
lines,
No,
just
I'm
needs
sorry,
Janet
I
to
got
keep
mixed up.
pictures.
Yeah, Anna's here somewhere.
Warning all
Bill's
guys.
not here.
Yeah.
Alright.
What are they filing over?
He's filing a defamation case against her because after she wrote this article,
Thanks for that.
opinion piece
Yeah, I'm gonna get you guys that whole page when I add it.
in the Washington Post, immediately just dropped on my and that stranger piece thing, you know, the
Harry Potter thing.
sequels to Harry Potter, yeah, they dropped them.
A lot of images, so you
Oh,
had
yeah,
to.
so start shooting it.
Oh, yeah,
So you
congratulations.
just shoot the shit out things, go from your running this line.
Well, the guy that really got it.
Room's a lot smaller than I remember.
Yeah.
Saul and I had pictures in Washington Post.
Maybe that's why I think.
Oh, no, January sixth.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if you got it. My friend, he wrote me the
As soon as they sent me the one in what fell over? It fell over. Oh my god, that's horrible.
yeah, it's everybody. Oh, yeah, yeah. All there. Sorry.
Yeah, just because there was nothing that was signed, he signed the thing with
Yeah.
the Barton on it.
How did you get it?
All those video guys are good.
The snow guys do. New York Times. Aaron Schaff, she's tiny, tiny little woman, got beat up by 3 guys.
Oh, you got it years later.
Yeah. And I said, no, I said, would we?
Credentials taken off. So then, she only flew back in court. So then,
He was like, because I got.
another photographer tried to help her, so she didn't know what was going on, trying to arrest her. And they're like, no, take her, she's got beat up by these guys. She works for the New York Times, you know,
He literally.
so she had a bit of her,
He's like, why wasn't there ever get this problem? I used to tear up. I said,
no, I
you
don't know
play it
where
on
that
the-
went.
stuff like
Buried
that.
in some
It was-
field in New Jersey.
Yeah, somebody's got them, they're hanging on their wall.
Yeah, some other dude stands next to a deer head or something.
Yeah, hanging from the antlers of the deer. Not that I'm totally against hunting, right?
It's a good
But I can
visual.
see, yeah, it's a good visual.
That's pretty good, that's a good visual.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad somebody passed. But they all the journalists in Ukraine.
Did they?
But yeah,
I don't know about that.
I think so.
Just like everybody.
Every Ukrainian journalist working in Ukraine.
Oh, wow, that's my buddy Roman.
You might not have fact checked that, but I think
Yeah.
that's correct.
Buddy Roman. It's dangerous. We used to go in to cover wars where we're kind of on the winning side,
Right.
you know, and not on the side that's getting,
Shit.
yeah.
The problem is they're just, they can shoot missiles anywhere, you know, and
Yeah, yeah.
I think I shot my last war.
Yeah, me too. When
I
I was
just
a
want to
kid,
make it to that retirement.
when I had a kid, I think it wasn't a conscious decision, but that's the last time I've done it, you know. I did go to Haiti one time, some was for the earthquake, I was some spot.
That made such an impression, just that.
Yeah.
Huge shock.
Oh,
I got back, I like,
PTSD.
I couldn't fight it.
And I just completely stunned that I found, and he happens to be in that, and he played.
I just,
It's worse than a war.
it was, actually, it was just, the scale of misery was just,
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I was just like,
The first team that did anything.
saw,
The third
I
version.
just saw a guy,
Yeah, I flew into Port-au-Prince 2 days after, and was there.
Port-au-Prince. No, I'm talking about, I was in just Texas.
Oh, yeah, just recently.
Yeah.
That
just-
sucks. Ugh, yeah, that's brutal.
Port-au-Prince, yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah,
It just,
I don't like thinking about it. Trying to turn this thing on, just-
oh, shit. I'm glad you got that.
Bike ride. Let's go.
It was just like whiplash. I would say one and then come
Oh,
and say
I know.
it was exact opposite.
Yeah.
With the whole.
Yeah, we got a weird spot though, right? We should leave, we should set, not some of the stuff, if you have a leak from the Supreme Court, and legislators start trying to legislate
Based on
law
law.
based on stuff coming out of the Supreme Court, you got a problem. It's a problem, no matter what the issue. It just, it can't work like that.
Seth Meyers, do you watch that? The Late Show, is it? He said it could have been Jenny Thomas. Why not?
She's all for it though, I'm sure.
Well, the theory, there's like, one theory is if you put it out there, then justices don't want to look like they back down, so they'll.
Right, true. And the other side is like a disgruntled, yeah, either role, law clerk or something.
There aren't that many law clerks out there.
True. Sir? Sir? Sirs?
And the green one.
Just what she should look like.
Doesn't she walk right there?
Okay, never mind, I guess I'll find out.
Okay. Wow. They set up history, I take pictures.
Danny, close the door down.
Good morning, good morning. Not such a good morning in that today on the steps of the Capitol, we will be observing the 1 millionth death from COVID. My understanding is the president is lowering flags at half-staff. We will have, sadly, our regular coming together in prayer and song. 1 million people have died. It's such a terrible toll. And when you think of what it means in the lives of those families. So we send, of course, our condolences to the families, the children, the siblings, the friends, the colleagues, the spouses of those lost. The heartbreak continues. All the more reason why we must pass the COVID legislation so we can purchase vaccines, provide testing and treatments to prevent the outbreak from various other variants that may come along, and deaths. Today, as a source of pride to us, well, Tuesday was a source of pride to us because that is when we passed the $40 billion legislation for our assistance in military, humanitarian, and economic assistance to the people of Ukraine. As you know, I was there recently with a very distinguished delegation. the meeting started by the president thanking our president and the American people for the support to Ukraine as they fight for democracy in their country, and it is a fight for democracy globally. Excuse me. So the president was most appreciative, but also had some other requests in terms of weapons, in terms of humanitarian and economic assistance. That's what we have largely in this legislation, which should be coming up in the floor in the Senate anytime, and we'll be able to pass the bill and send it to the president. We think it's a very complete piece of legislation, and I salute our Appropriations Committee Chair, Rosa DeLauro, in bipartisan way, House and Senate coming together on the bill. We're very pleased that we had about an 80% bipartisan bill on the House floor for this, so it is bringing us together. Then again, in addition, as we support the fight for democracy against dictatorship, we also salute the bipartisan support we've had for the Lend-Lease bill, which the president signed, the seize and freeze legislation, which is so important in terms of using Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine. And again, we just had on Tuesday also a meeting of the Munich Security Conference, one part of it here in the Capitol, where we saw the unity of the European countries around this issue. And it really goes beyond European countries. Next week on the floor of the House, we will have another piece of our lowering costs for the American people legislation. First, House Democrats led by Congresswoman Schreier and Congresswoman Porter introduced the Consumer Fuel Price Gouging Prevention Act. While families are struggling to pay higher prices at the pump, oil and gas companies are recording record profits, with 7 largest oil companies announcing buybacks that could total $41 billion this year alone. Again and again, we see gas prices rise, sometimes when the cost of oil drops, oil prices drop, and price gouging needs to be stopped. This is a major exploitation of the consumer, because this is a product the consumer must have. Again, the Putin tax hike at the pump is a part of this, and you would think that the oil companies would compensate for that rather than exploit the opportunity that it. So, and this bill, what this bill does, price gouging needs to be addressed, including new tools at the FTC to address those abuses. Our bill enables the president to issue an energy emergency declaration, making it unlawful to increase gas and home energy prices in an exploitive and excessive way, which is part of the business plan of these companies. Right now, as we gather here, the Competes Act is having, the conference committee is having its first meeting. I think it's on station 83, channel 83 for anyone who has channel 83 in their world. And we are focused on sending this cost-cutting legislation, Make It in America, to the president as soon as we can. Competes is cost-lowering anti-inflation bill. We are so dependent on foreign products, factors of production to do our own manufacturing, and that it increased cost. So this has $52 billion in the Competes Act for chips. We've had this conversation before, 1,000 chips in a car, 2,000 in an electric car. In order to continue manufacturing cars, we need to have more chips, we need to be self-sufficient, independent, make it in America with the chips. $45 billion supply, and that's semiconductors as well. $45 billion to address supply chain issues. The less product, the less supply, the higher the cost. So we want to increase supply in the supply chain. to lower costs for the American people. And again, it bolsters research and education and strengthening apprenticeship programs and the rest, again, strengthening America's U.S. global economic leadership. 134 industry groups, some of which have never been on the same side of us in many of these bills. Our office will tweet you their contact, but there's pages and pages and pages of organizations that support the bill. By and large, it is bipartisan. We do have some differences, which we will reconcile in the conference committee. So we're very excited about that. As a piece of it, I talked about workforce development and the rest. Next week, we'll also have the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which more specifically goes to the point that President Biden has, under his leadership, a record of 8.3 million jobs are created. But in March, it was said that 11.5 job positions were open. This legislation will connect workers to jobs at lower cost, increase paychecks, and help small businesses in this economy. So again, lower prices for all Americans at the pump, at the kitchen table, and across the board. It's great sadness always to talk about Roe v. Wade and this draft decision is, how harmful it is, how dangerous it is for women and families across the country. Yesterday, Senate Republicans lined up in lockstep behind Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump to vote to rip away the constitutional right to health freedom from American women across the country. Across the country. Every day, Republicans show their intention to punish and control women's most personal health reproductive decisions. The GOP-appointed Supreme Court put there for the purpose. You know, in our country, we have always had, because of the brilliance and genius of our Constitution, an expansion of freedom. With this possible, or the suggested draft of it, would be the first time a court has expanded freedom and then contracted it in a very, very dangerous way. Republicans in Congress across the nation are mobilizing around a dangerous extremist agenda to criminalize all forms of reproductive health, including in vitro fertilization, post-miscarriage care, contraception. Make no mistake, once Republicans shred their law, they have shredded any commitment to precedent, despite saying that they support precedent, and privacy, which is fundamental, by saying certain things are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. Well, that was the beauty of the Constitution, that it gave the opportunity to further increase our decision-making. As Republicans seek to criminalize women's health and reproductive freedom, Democrats are fighting to defend Roe v. Wade and our fundamental constitutional rights. Tomorrow morning, House Democrats will gather on the steps of the Capitol across the street from the Supreme Court to shine a light on this life and death threat. And over the weekend, Americans across the country will lead days of action and marching, making their voices heard. Democrats stand with America's women in fighting for our rights and the rights of all Americans, which are on the line. This is so very, very sad. Any questions? Yeah, yes.
On the issue, Madam Speaker, on the issue of the baby formula shortage, President Biden is going to speak with manufacturers and retailers later today. We know Congress is expected to hold hearings, but is there anything your caucus is specifically discussing to try to address this?
Well, for a long time now, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, the chair of the Appropriations Committee, formerly the chair, at one point the chair of the Agriculture Subcommittee, under which much of this falls, nutrition, WIC, and all of that, has been addressing this issue. And when I say addressing, that includes investigating, looking for other possibilities, because in anticipation, just to make sure that something like this would not happen. And we just look forward to what the president has to say. Everybody has suggestions about we make sure it never happens again, and that's important. But right now, the baby's crying, the baby's hungry. We need to address it right now. And I think we have good focus on it. And we'll see what the president has to say. And we have our proposals as well that, as I say, Rosa is taking the lead on. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that you mentioned here, if you could give us an update on the timing around COVID relief, and then secondly, on abortion protections.
Yeah.
What left is there for Democrats to do?
Well, as you've heard me say before, public sentiment is everything. Abraham Lincoln. I think that once women understand across the country what this means to them, this is not a public policy debate that is isolated from the personal impact that it has on the lives of women, whether it's contraception, whether it's in vitro fertilization, whether it's post-miscarriage care, whether it's size and timing of a family. It is personal between a woman, her doctor, her God, her family, not the Supreme Court or the Congress of the United States. So again, it's about how women value their decision-making, and we think they do. We have passed the legislation. We've been ready for a long time. And you give me the opportunity to say this. The Senate, I hear some voices out there saying, well, why don't they just do the Republican bill? Well, and the House bill goes beyond Roe v. Wade. No, it doesn't. What it does, it is Roe v. Wade as reaffirmed by Casey. So it's Roe v. Wade and then the further protections and clarifications of Casey. That is what we want to enshrine as law. And so that's what we have to make sure people understand. It's not enough just to pass a bill to have a compromise. It's not a compromise because what's in the Republican bill would enable states to do very destructive things when it comes to a woman's right to choose. And then COVID, those discussions continue. We must pass COVID. It is absolutely essential to health and well-being of the American people. But in the timing of things, we were ready with Ukraine, so we moved with that. Now we must be ready with COVID, and I'm optimistic that we will do that. Yes, yeah. Let me see, who hasn't had a question lately, but who's a regular here? Jake?
You have, I remember you had mentioned that you thought the cost of the COVID bill would go up because it's not been passed and the situation would become more dire.
Yeah.
Do you have a range in mind? Because the Senate, Mitt Romney has said $10 billion, put his proposal on the floor. I just wonder where you come down on that.
Well, I don't come down on that. I mean, the proposal was $22.5 billion, and that would enable us to meet the needs at home and have $5 billion to meet our global responsibilities, because as we know, none of us safe unless all of us are safe, and we have a global responsibility. So I start at that figure. And since the $10 billion was discussed, the threat has increased. As some of the Republican senators said, well, if the threat increases, then let's talk about it further. So I think that we should start with what we need. And by the way, that didn't mean that was the end of it. It just depends on the variants and what else happens. But I feel confident that we'll get something done.
Madam
Yeah,
Thank you. As you know, primary season is upon us.
wait a minute, just in terms of what we were talking about here in terms of policy, because that's what we're here about. On policy?
On coronavirus, just a follow-up on that. When President Biden took office, there was about 400,000 COVID deaths. Now, as you noted, there's about 1 million. You said Democrats were committed to crushing the virus. President Biden ran on beating COVID. Looking back at this time, do you think there's anything else that you all could have done to prevent this death toll?
I want to salute President Biden for what he has done in the fight against COVID. Made a drastic difference from the denial that our country was in before, and the lack of attention that was given to it. President is paying attention to science, and the governance necessary to deal with it. I'm very proud of what he has done. God knows how bad it would be if he had not taken the actions that he has taken. Oh, here you go. Okay, this has to be the last question, though, because we're diverting from the,
I'm wondering why you're supporting Henry Cuellar in his Texas runoff. You have long maintained that House members should have the highest ethical standards, but he had his house, as you know, raided by the FBI just several weeks ago.
well, let me just thank you for the question. I'm supporting Henry Cuellar. He's a valued member of our caucus. The FBI has said he is not under investigation, and so it's up to his constituents to make the decision to send him to Congress. I thought you were going to take it to choice or something. He is not pro-choice, but we didn't need him. We passed the bill with what we had. And by the way, this is one of the first Congresses that we have had with a Democratic president with a pro-choice Congress. When President Obama was president, the House Democratic Caucus, we didn't have 218 pro-choice votes. That's why the Affordable Care Act was the fight that it was at the end, because there were those on the outside who were saying, oh, it's about, Roe v. Wade and terminating a pregnancy, which it completely was not. But our members, even those who were not pro-choice, understood that that was not what the healthcare bill was about, but there was an attempt on the outside to paint it that way. Thank God for the nuns. Thank God for the nuns, the Catholic nuns who supported the legislation and helped us push open that gate to pass that legislation. Thank you all very much. Right now, we have 9 heads of state from the ASEAN visiting. The president has called a meeting of ASEAN here in D.C., and we are welcoming them to the Capitol. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We're gonna vote for Defense Production Act for the baby formulas.
Because